Is this the image of a rabbit or a duck? Well, it's actually both. In the next couple of minutes, we'll look at how our reality can be perceived in two entirely different ways. One, the conventional, contracted sense of self way that is the root cause of all of our suffering, or the no self way that cuts to the root issue of the cause of all of our suffering. This video is based off a recent blog post I wrote containing pragmatic wisdom extracted from meditation masters Daniel M. Ingram, John Yates, Michael Taft, and so on for realizing no self. I seriously believe that if the information in this video is seriously let in, it can be the groundwork for some incredible insights to come out of suffering. So without further ado, let's dive in. So what is no self? At first glance, it seems super nebulous. How can there really be no self? We've been conditioned our whole lives to believe that this is who I am, this is me, and the outside world is over there. And how could it be any other way? Well, we'll get into that shortly, but to start with, no self is the translation of the Pali word Anatta, but also has other interpretations such as emptiness, selflessness, non-duality, etc. And when no self is realized, there's a sense of unity, of interconnectedness, and appreciation for all things. So it's a worthy insight to cultivate. You see, conventionally, we have so much attachment to our identities. If someone yells at us, we might feel anger in response. The self responds to that in reactivity. Or if we post something on social media, we might want vanity or recognition, or we might even feel fear or worry from being criticized. You see, the self is the root. If there was no self, there would be nothing to defend. There would be nothing to be worried about because there's nothing for criticism to land on. There's no self to care about what other people think of what we post on social media. And because we feel like this sense of self, these emotions really feel like this is me, this is who I am. How could it be any other way? But this is out of pure ignorance. You see, this illusion is based on 4 assumptions that we unknowingly and unconsciously are believing to be true. These are that we're a permanent self, we're a separate self, we're acausal, and independently functioning. And don't worry, that's going to sound pretty nebulous at first, but we'll break those illusions down in just a moment. You see, the practice of no self, and yes, it is a practice, is to continuously see these illusions that uphold this sense of self and continually see through their illusory nature over and over again until we bang it into our thick skulls that yes, okay, there really is no self driving this experience, until it's intuitively understood, where it's operating unconsciously. We don't even need to think about the understanding, rather it's just happening. Let's now dive into these 4 illusions and spend some quality time deconstructing them. So the first illusion that we believe is that we're a permanent, static entity that's completely unchanging, that this bundle of mental and physical sensations is who we are. However, this is an illusion. And let's deconstruct that now with the who are you experiment. For instance, if I asked you who you are, you might first respond that saying you're the body. You're your body. But are you your fingernails? If your fingernails were snipped off, the sense of I remains, doesn't it? Or even if you're your arm, if you cut off your arm, the sense of I would still remain. So how can you be the body if when a part of it is cut off, we still remain? And how much of this body do we need to keep removing before the sense of self disappears? So we really can't be our body. And when we look at it on an anatomical level, we can see that cells in the body are constantly in a state of renewal. They're constantly changing. Okay, well then you might say, I'm my thoughts, right? Well, if you were your thoughts, then if a thought came and went, say, oh, I'm hungry, I have to go eat lunch, when that left, you would disappear, wouldn't you? The sense of I would disappear. But thoughts come and go, like waves in the ocean, so we can't be our thoughts. And then you might say something even more intimate, like, I'm my emotions. Like, I'm sadness, I'm anxious, I'm angry. That's who I am. But once again, emotions also come and go like waves, so we can't be our emotions either. And really the only place that's left if we continue to deconstruct our sensory experience is the observer. I must be the observer that's watching all of this unfold, right? It's like watching a movie. However, when you try and look for this observer, when you turn your attention inward to look for this observer, it can't be found. You know, one moment it feels like a bundle of sensations in the middle of the head. The next moment it feels like the thing that is observing those sensations. Or then it's a tightness in the throat, or then it's our vision. See, it's constantly changing. How could we be the thing that is constantly changing locus? So when we deconstruct our whole sensory experience in this way, we can see that there is no permanent self. And in case you're interested, I actually went in far more depth into this concept in a previous video, which I'll link up to a card up in one of the corners of the screen here. So the second illusion that upholds this sense of self is that we believe that we're a separate object or entity that's here and objects are out here. So objects being people, items, and that sort of stuff. We're completely separate from the world and it couldn't be any other way. You see, our sensate reality, what we're experiencing in our minds and our bodies, creates these barriers that sort of separates us from the world. But when you get really good at perceiving these barriers, at perceiving your sensate reality in high resolution, that we have to train ourselves with mindfulness or meditation, these barriers start to dissolve. Now, let's not get all grandiose here and think like, okay, wow, I'm all one with the universe. Wow, therefore I must be able to experience the sensate reality of an animal over the other side of the world. Let's not get ridiculous here. You see, we're still here from a conventional point of view. All that's happening is we're changing our perception to the way in which we're perceiving the world, one that is more unitive. As the illusion of duality is just an illusion, when perception is well developed, the sense that the textures of reality actually form some boundary between what we call self and what we call other doesn't exist in the way that we generally perceive it to. The third illusion upholding the sense of self is that we're in control of everything. Now, this again can sound quite earth-shattering and delusional at first, but when we pay close attention, we can really see causality at play. You see, since the very first moment of our creation, external factors have influenced who we are today. Parents have predisposed us to traits based on genetics. Doctors have cut our umbilical cord. Kids have bullied us at school. This all impacts our psyche. Notice then that our psyche is formed by conditions that were outside of our control. And those events in themselves were also outside of their control. So everything is out of control. We're not in control and driving this seat. While we can act like that, we do have intentions and we are responsible for our actions. The more ultimate no self view is that everything is just happening. Everything is perfect, is a popular saying in the spiritual world. And that's what it means, that everything is dependent on causality. And nothing escapes this cone of causality, absolutely nothing. And eventually it expands the entire universe. So why is this then useful to know? Well, when we realize that everyone is really just doing their best, given the conditions that had caused them to be who they are and take a certain action, then we can have utmost compassion. That's the best they could have done, or we could have done in any given moment. And to assume otherwise would mean that life wasn't dependent on causality. So I find this particularly useful if, for instance, I'm feeling particularly anxious and I contracted to that sense of self and I really feel like this is me that is feeling anxious. I'm the one who is driving this and making the decision to feel anxious. But when we realize that, wow, okay, this is just dependent on causes and conditions, it's totally liberating. And the fourth illusion that upholds the sense of self is the convention of emptiness. See, we think the way that we perceive things in the world is the way that they really are. You see, humans have unique biological systems that we've developed through evolution to perceive things as in the world. So for instance, color red. When we look at the color red, it's actually not red in the objective universe. It's simply electromagnetic radiation that biological systems like rods and cones in the eye have interpreted to be as red. It's a construct of the mind. Now this also expands all subjective experience, so consider emotions as well. They are also a mental construct. See, all that exists in our body is chemical reactions, which then lead to nerve impulses, which then feel unpleasant, neutral, or pleasant. See, the universe doesn't feel in the way that humans feel. And you guessed it, this also applies to things like taste, touch, smell, hearing, thoughts as well. All of it's a mental construct. And we like to act like we are seeing things as the way that they are in the world, but this is conditioned from birth. And look, this shouldn't discount sensory experience. Things certainly feel real. There's a reason why we've developed survival systems to interpret various sense data coming in certain ways. That being said, it's also incredibly liberating to keep that ultimate perspective in the back of our minds so we don't get too enamored by these sensations that comprise our experience. So if it isn't clear enough already, upholding these four illusions that contract us into a sense of self is incredibly costly, and it is the root cause of all of our suffering. Why? Because it takes a lot of energy to do so. And believe it or not, we're unconsciously doing this all the time unless we become aware of the truths that I've just outlined. So deconstructing the illusion by frequently seeing through and cutting through these illusions over and over again is what will awaken us eventually. And what separates a heavyweight lifter in realizing no self, to use an analogy, from maybe a lightweight, is the capacity to see through these illusions. And much like the rabbit and the duck illusion that I alluded to at the start of this video, we can eventually flip over where this becomes our default state of perception. The no self way of perceiving, the selfless way, the Anatta way, however you want to interpret it. So if you want to glimpse no self directly, which we can do in any given moment, I would highly recommend you to check out my blog post on this topic, as I've included some more in-depth information and links to guided meditations by Michael Taft and Sam Harris that can help you on your path to awakening and in realizing no self. And if you're new here, my name is Sam Roth. I make weekly pragmatic dharma and mindfulness and videos on awakening to help other people, and myself for that matter, come out of suffering. So if that's your forte, definitely subscribe to the channel. And if you found this video of value, please leave me a like, because it helps put my face in front of other people who need to hear this content. And I believe truly that people need to awaken to their experiential reality if we have any hope moving forward in the future. And leave me a comment to let me know which realization you're going to integrate. I, for instance, am a huge proponent of the realization of causality, that everything is dependent on causes and conditions. So let me know what you found of value in the video today. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video. And I'm sorry this one took so long to get out. I've been in the process of moving, if you can't tell already, but I'm back and I'm ready to get after it.